Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Aubain, filling in for Kibin Aline, and today is Tuesday, August 22nd. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. There are many reasons to purchase a home right now, as home ownership continues to be a catalyst for Americans to build generational wealth. Let's turn to an expert with insights on the real estate outlook for the remainder of the year, and is now still a good time to invest in home ownership? Joining us from Chicago to discuss at the Realtor Leadership Summit is Jessica Lautz, Deputy Chief Economist and Vice President of Research for the National Association of REALTORS. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Of course. So just to start off, what is the National Association of Realtors?
So, the National Association of Realtors is actually an organization of real estate professionals who are upholding the best ethics that they can possibly have in the real estate profession, so that you, as a client, when you go into the buying and selling process, know that you have someone who is going to uphold the greatest standards as you go into the biggest financial transaction of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to buying a home, potential buyers always hear there's a good time to buy a home, there's a bad time to buy a home, right? So for people who may not know, what are the key indicators of a quote good time or bad time to purchase a home?
So, what you want to be looking at as a home buyer going into that transaction is honestly your own personal finances. Do you plan on staying in that home for a good period of time, or is it a quick flip? If you plan that you need to be in an easy transition period so that you can rent a property because your job could change or you have a growing family, maybe purchasing a home right this second is not the best time for you. So, looking and consulting your own financial is really the best source of information. But you also want to take into account home prices, interest rates. Do you have that down payment in hand? And calculate all of that, talking to an expert along the way of what you can do in that process.
And what are some important things for a first-time homeowner? What are some important things that they should know before going into this endeavor?
Well, you want to know what the typical down payment is, which is about 6 to 7%. But there are a lot of low down payment options for you, perhaps a VA loan or an FHA loan, where you can actually get into a home a little bit easier than perhaps thinking about that typical 20%. It's quite a dated phenomenon, but that myth is still prevalent in the real estate and buying practice.
Absolutely. And many in our audience are contemplating whether it's a good time to buy a home, as we mentioned, or to sell a home. So, currently, what are the trends that agents are seeing, and what can we expect for the remainder of 2023 and 2024?
So I think the good thing to know right now is that home prices are moving up in your local area. There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of people who want to buy a home right now. On the flip side, though, inventory is really tight. Home builders have not been building, and we need more inventory out there for young adults who are coming into peak household formation. So unfortunately, when we see the limited inventory situation, we're actually seeing that the typical seller is actually receiving three offers for every home that's listed, and they're typically moving 33% of homes are moving actually more than the asking price.
Wow. And, the NAR recently released its second quarter Metro Home Prices report. Can you give us some insights from that report?
In your local market, what we're actually seeing is that home prices increased on an annual basis 1.3%. And now we do see the median price of homes in your area is $629,000. Now, I have to say that that's the overall area. And so we know that each zip code and local block area could have very vastly different home prices.
And purchasing a home is typically the largest financial transaction a person will ever experience in their lifetime. What type of return on investment has middle income homeowners seen in the last decade from this investment?
We typically see that the typical owner stays in their home for about a decade. And over that course of time, we're actually seeing that they're gaining about $200,000 in housing wealth. Now, that's looking at a nationwide scale. So we know that each local market, again, down to that block level or even zip code level, is going to have different price gains than you may see in other areas of the country.
And as we just mentioned how important it is purchasing a home and just how large of a transaction that is. What are some concerns or hesitations that first-time homeowners or buyers currently have? What do they come to agents with?
So the biggest problem that we're seeing right now for first-time home buyers is that the share is lower than we traditionally have seen in the housing market. In fact, first-time home buyers are the lowest share that we've seen in the last 41 years. And the major reason why is saving for a down payment. It's getting that money together to be able to enter into a housing market where home prices have continually gone up really for the last decade. And so we're seeing the struggles that they're facing, whether that's because of student loan debt or childcare costs or just looking at higher rental costs. It's harder to save for a down payment unless you have that generational transfer of wealth. And that's really the biggest concern that potential first time buyers are facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also mean, even just coming out of COVID in general, people are trying to get back on their feet. So when it comes to them buying a home, what does that look like? And what should that saving process potentially look like? What is your advice on that?
Honestly, I would say go to your local mortgage broker, go to your bank, and really consult the experts who can help you along in that process. It may actually be closer in reach than you think it is, just because we know that those myths are quite pervasive in the real estate market, that you need that 20% down, but really you may be able to get in there with a VA loan or a FHA loan at a much lower down payment.
And with generally higher interest rates than a year ago and a housing inventory shortage, what advice are you giving to your clients looking to buy a home in this market?
It is a very interesting market. We are seeing that interest rates are close to 7% right now. That's considerably higher than we had seen during COVID years, where they went as low as 2 to 3%. And so we know that potentially there's a lot of sellers out there who really they're not in that home that really meets their needs. Maybe their commute is longer or it's just not the right size of home, and they're probably waiting on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to go down. For buyers, the big thing to understand is that while interest rates are expected to go down towards the end of the year, that means that competition could come back into the marketplace. And again, we have that limited inventory situation. So right now for first time homebuyers, right now might be the better market for them to look at because that competition is not as fierce as it was last year.
Absolutely. And what are some resources that any homeowner or potential buyer can use to help make the right choice?
I would go to realtor.com. They are the best source that you can find a local professional who can help you in that buying and selling process. It's a complicated process and you want that expert by your side.
Absolutely. And when it comes to first time home buyers, what is your advice for their initial first steps? They're new, they want to buy their first home. What is your advice to them? What are the first steps they should take?
I would do my research. I would check out HUD.gov, see what low down payment programs are available, and then I would go to two experts, your local mortgage broker and your local realtor who's going to help you navigate that transaction. The more experts and the more research you have by your side, you're going into this process educated, and that's what you want to do.
Absolutely. And even though we are running out of time, can you just elaborate a little bit on the two experts that you just mentioned for those who may not know?
Absolutely. So your local mortgage broker is going to tell you what down payment options that would be the best for you. What do you feel comfortable paying at the end of the month? How long is your commute? Should you factor that in? They're going to be able to help you navigate that transaction and make you feel comfortable with that payment. How does that compare to your rent? Or are you doubling up with friends and family right now? And then your local realtor is going to be able to tell you neighborhoods, be able to tell you negotiation, help you get that ratified contract and walk you through every step of that home buying process.
Jessica, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more open right after this.